In this video, we are going to talk about oxygen and carbon dioxide between lungs and the tissues of the body. First, oxygen enters inside the alveoli of the lung during breathing. Then this oxygen passes from alveoli to the blood vessel. So when oxygen passes from alveoli to the blood vessel, it has to pass three membranous layers. What are these three membranous layers? Squamous epithelium of alveoli, then the basement membrane which is present between alveoli and blood vessel, and then endothelium of blood capillary. Okay, so let's zoom this diagram. This is the alveoli and this is the single layer of squamous epithelium. Okay, this is squamous epithelium. Okay, then here is the basement membrane which is present between the alveoli and the blood vessel. Okay, then the endothelium of blood vessel. So this is the endothelium of blood vessel. Of blood capillary. Okay, what is present inside the blood capillary? Liquid yellow liquid part which is called plasma. Also RBC. Inside the RBC, what is present? Hemoglobin. So if you see the structure of hemoglobin, okay, it is made up of 4 heme part which has iron in it. Okay, and each heme part is attached with a globulin protein. This is your hemoglobin. Okay, so oxygen from alveoli passes squamous epithelium of alveoli, basement membrane, and endothelium of blood capillary. 3% oxygen dissolved in plasma and rest of the 97% oxygen attached with the hemoglobin. Okay, now the blood become oxygenated, and this hemoglobin which attached with the oxygen is called oxyhemoglobin. Hemoglobin. How many hemoglobin is present inside the RBC? 280 million hemoglobin presents inside the RBC. Okay. Now, this oxygenated blood will go to the heart and heart pump this to the tissues of the body. So, suppose that this is the tissue of the body. Inside tissue, what is going on? Glucose oxidize and it produce carbon dioxide plus water and energy. Okay, so this is called cellular respiration. Tissue need oxygen for cellular respiration. So blood vessels carry the oxygen to the tissue. Okay, here 3% oxygen which is dissolved in plasma diffuse in tissue, but that oxygen is not sufficient for the tissue. Tissue required more oxygen. So for that, what happened? This hemoglobin have the 97% oxygen, okay, but hemoglobin don't lose oxygen easily to the tissues or cells of the body. Okay, it requires some other factor rather than the concentration gradient. Okay, so what are these other factors? See, first the CO2 which is released by tissue go out in plasma. 7% CO2 dissolve in plasma. 20 to 25% CO2 attached to the hemoglobin, and rest of the 70% CO2 combined with water and it produce carbonic acid which quickly break down into hydrogen ion plus bicarbonate ion. Okay, this hydrogen ion will also attach to the hemoglobin. Okay, so what happened? Carbon dioxide attached to the hemoglobin, hydrogen ion attached to the hemoglobin, and this process is a reversible reaction. Okay. Also, this process take place in presence of an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase. Okay, if the concentration of bicarbonate ion increased inside the RBC, this process will go in reverse direction. That's why bicarbonate ion go out in plasma through a protein channel, and chlorine from plasma enter inside the RBC. This is called chloride shift. Okay. So, and due to the respiration, temperature is higher inside the tissue in comparison to lungs. So, what happened? Temperature is high, CO2 and hydrogen ion attached to the hemoglobin. Then hemoglobin will lose one molecule of oxygen to the tissues. So, hemoglobin never lose 100% oxygen to the tissue. Only 25% oxygen is given by hemoglobin to the tissue. Okay, that's how oxygen is transported from lung to the tissues or cells of the body. Okay, now because carbon dioxide dissolve in blood vessel and in RBC, so this is called deoxygenated blood. Now these blood vessels will carry deoxygenated blood from tissue to the lung. So here we talk about the transport of CO2, carbon dioxide. Okay. So what happens? Suppose that this is the tissue. Okay. And from tissue, what happened? Deoxygenated blood go to the lungs. What is present in lungs? Alveoli. Okay. So in deoxygenated blood, CO2 present in three form. Okay. First, 7% CO2 in dissolved in plasma. Rest 70% in form of bicarbonate ion in plasma, and 20 to 25% CO2 attached to the hemoglobin. First, the CO2, this 7% CO2 which is dissolved in plasma, diffuse out in alveoli. Okay, then this CO2 which is attached to the hemoglobin diffuse out to the alveoli. Why? Because oxygen from alveoli enter inside the RBC and attach to the hemoglobin. So hemoglobin lose carbon dioxide. Okay. Now this bicarbonate ion enter inside the RBC and the process take place in reverse direction. Okay. So due to this process in reverse direction, what produce? Carbon dioxide is produced. This carbon dioxide also diffuse out in alveoli. Okay. And in lungs, temperature is low in comparison to the body tissue. Okay. So these are the factors which help CO2 to diffuse from blood vessels to the lung. Okay, so transport of CO2 is done. Now, oxygen dissociation curve. This curve shows the saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen. See, when oxygen from lungs, okay, enter inside the blood vessels and attach to the hemoglobin, it doesn't attach to the hemoglobin at once. It attach one by one to all four active sites. So suppose that this is the four site of hemoglobin, only one site is open. Okay, so first the one side get open and oxygen attached to it, then the second side get open, oxygen attached to it, then third part get open, oxygen attached to it, and then fourth part get open and oxygen attached to it. That's why we never get the straight line of hemoglobin saturation. Slowly the oxygen attached to the hemoglobin and then saturation comes. This is called the sigmoid curve. So when this oxygen reaches to the tissue, inside the tissue, because of the temperature is high, CO2 concentration is increased and pH is decreased, the hemoglobin lose affinity to the oxygen. So this curve shift to right. And in lungs, temperature is low, CO2 is decreased and pH is increased. The Hemoglobin affinity to oxygen is increased. That's why this curve shift to the left. So the topic is done. I hope you like it. Please like, share, subscribe my channel. Thank you.